Yeah, let's get right into it, man.
So it says, now as he drew near, he saw the city and wept over it, saying, if you had not known, even you, especially in this your day, the things that make for you your peace, but now they are hidden from your eyes. For days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment around you, surrounding you and close you in on every side, and level you and your children within you to the ground, and they will not leave you one stone upon another, because you did not know the time of your visitation. Interesting. We know he's talking about the temple, right? That they dug the stones out because there was gold that had seeped in after the fire, and they didn't leave one stone on top of each other. What's interesting, though, about that is that there is actually a Great Controversy quote that talks a little bit about that. It says, the Savior's prophecy concerning the visitation of the judgments upon Jerusalem is to have another fulfillment, of which that terrible desolation was but a faint shadow. And we're not going into the typical method on this, where a lot of people go in and talk about country living, although that's a very interesting topic. It's out of the realm of what we're talking about today, because this is very fascinating how AI fits into this same presentation. So this prophecy is so significant. It mentioned by Jesus, and it's going to happen again. Maybe we should study the judgments upon Jerusalem that will have another fulfillment in order to really understand what is going on with this AI thing. So first, although this prophecy will have two fulfillments, the actual events and has two sieges. You follow me what I'm saying here? Because this is very important that we understand the structure of this prophecy. There was two sieges in the history on Jerusalem itself. There was AD 66 when Roman came. Well, let me just bring you through it, bring you through the history. Roman under Caesar, or excuse me, Sentius, surrounded Jerusalem with and withdrew unexpectedly, allowing Christians to flee Pella, as Jesus warned. So there's a quote from Great Controversy that we can really dive further into this. Let me see if I can bring that up here. Yeah, here it is. After the Romans under Sentius, how do we say that? Cestius had surrounded the city, they unexpectedly abandoned the siege when everything seemed favorable for immediate attack. The besieged, despairing of successful resistance, were on the point of surrender when the Roman general withdrew his forces without the least apparent reason. But God's merciful providence was directing events for good of his own people. The promised sign had been given to the waiting Christians, and now the opportunity was offered for all who would to obey the Savior's warning. Events were so overruled that neither Jew nor Roman should hinder the flight from the Christians. Events were so overruled that neither Jew nor Romans would hinder the flight of the Christians. Very interesting what was happening here. So the Zealots still believed that the prophecies of the Bible were about winning over the Roman power. That's what, and back in Jesus' day, they still fought against that. So as the Roman power left Jerusalem, they went and attacked the Roman power, and they really gave them a beating because they were rear flanked by this. So remember, the Jewish people were upset with Christians, but due to the Roman power, the Christians were able to escape the city. So there was a second siege that happened after this. The second siege, the siege resumed under Titus, leading Jerusalem's destruction in AD 70, with no Christians perishing due to their prior escape. Starvation and the fulfillment of Jesus' prophecy. The fire that lit the sanctuary melted the gold between the bricks, which fulfilled Jesus' prophecy. They will not leave you in one stone upon another, because you did not know the time of your visitation. Fascinating. Many Christians fled to a nearby location called Pella, where they were not oppressed and could actually keep the Sabbath. And we know that because of Eusebius, Ecclesiastes of history. This is from that, a quote from that. It says, the spiritual seed of Abraham fled to Pella and the other side of Jordan, where they found a safe place of refuge and could serve their master and keep his Sabbath. Serve his master and keep his Sabbath. So those were the two sieges of the first section of history. Was there another section of history where they came hard upon God's people. There was, but I'm going to skip a couple things here because I want to make sure I'm not wasting your time. And there's fascinating history to this, but I'm going to dig further into that. Let's go to Great Controversy real quick and look at this quote from GC36. The Savior's prophecy concerning the visitation, we already read this, upon Jerusalem is to have another fulfillment, of which the terrible desolation was but a faint shadow. The siege of Jerusalem by the Roman armies was a signal for flight for Judean Christians. So the assumption of power on the part of the nation is the decree enforcing the papal Sabbath. Okay, so we're given more information on this, that the assumption of power on the part of our nation in the decree enforcing the papal Sabbath will be a warning to us, much as it was already a warning to the Christians, right? To the Christians of the of that first and second siege of the history. The second time this happens will be when our nation, she's talking about the United States, will decree and in the decree of enforcing the papal Sabbath. Has that happened yet? This is a trick question. Has that happened yet?
No, it has. Well, we had a history, 1888, where that kind of almost happened, but God, by his saving grace, because people was not ready, he extended, I will say, he delayed that siege, just as he did for the Jerusalem in AD 60. So Cestius went back, but we know that Titus came back in 70. So it seems like there's a parallel to that, and I can see what you're driving here as well. But I will say this, while it has not happened in a way that it has been prophesied to take place, I can tell you that the Roman armies are surrounding the city again.
Interesting, huh? So I think it's very fascinating that we as Christians should really look deep into this, because I think that, and I'm going to bring this back to AI in just a moment, because the Pope has actually made a quote that ties this all together. The current Pope, whatever he is, the 14th now, Leo, I guess his name is. But let's understand that history just before we get into that, because this decree enforcing worship on the Sabbath already went forth, although no one was hurt by this, similar to how nothing happened back then either. So let's look at that real quick. A change has occurred. In 1897, a decree enforcing the worship of this day is to go forth to all the world. This is from Speed of Prophecy. In the limited degree, it already has gone forth, she says. In several places, the civil power is speaking with the voice of a dragon, just as the heathen king spoke to the Hebrew captives. Okay, and this continued. She sent this also in 1900, 1903, 1904, 1906. And she hadn't really talked much about this beforehand. She says it was going to happen, but when she said that, something changed. So what changed? Well, in 1888, America and the land of the free, where religious freedom reigned supreme, Senator Henry W. Blair created what is known as the Blair Bill, which would attempt to force Christian worship in America. And you can go to this document, this PDF file. It shows the actual document. It says, as quickly as it came, it was forgotten. I'd say the first siege was ended, but we continued to have what was known as the blue laws, right? These blue laws continued as we went throughout history. And I think what's fascinating about that is that we continue to have these on the books, but they're really not enforced yet. So it's that siege that never went away, but it's there. It's just not enforced, as prophecy says. So I want to dive into the history real quick, because Pope Leo the 13th, that was the one before, he was also in this time period, and he had a lot to say about the time period during the papal Sabbaths. Now, a lot of people think, well, you're just going to stop and you're going to talk about how he was very pro pushing worship, as Revelation 13 says. Well, that's part of it. Is my mouse? Can you see my mouse on me? It's on my face right now.
No.
So, okay, good. And so I think what's fascinating, though, is that during this period, Pope Leo created the Rerum Novarum in 1891. It was type of encyclical, this thing he presents out and says, hey, I want to talk about something. It's very important that we talk about this. And he emphasized workers' rights. He emphasized including Sunday rest. And why was this? Well, what was going on in history at that time? This was the huge industrial revolution that happened back then. It was such a big deal that people were setting fires to factories over these things. In fact, the Queen, let me bring up a quote here from the Queen, see if I have that. Might not have it. I might have to just read it from you here. She says, I have too much love for my poor people who obtain their bread by knitting to forward my money to an invention that would tend to their ruin. This is from the Queen Elizabeth. She was like, I'm not going to have anything to do with these machines. They're taking away fabric from people that are knitting the clothing for these people. So by the turn of the 19th century, Parliament repealed laws that were on the books that kept machines from taking the jobs of the people. Interesting, huh? And before a mechanism, that's what they call it back then, croppers are the people that would cut the fabric and make it into an actual clothing. They would use 50-pound objects to smooth the wool, but as cropping machines became widespread, they became unemployed. Well, cropping people that cropped were the very big guys. They had to move this weight basically around all day, and they became very big and very loud. Usually, they were not very happy about losing their jobs. And they were the foremost in really pushing the idea of having nothing to do with these machines because they had no more livelihood. And people slowly started losing their jobs over this. So the question of quality became a question. The framework, knitters had made garments with tube material. Remember, this garment was made of one tube. That's why they auctioned it off, because it was such a nice fabric. And this was way back then. But as things progressed, we didn't really change in our technology until these machines came around. So they were still making tubes of fabric, and they were taking these tubes and they were making garments out of them. But no more were they using tubes. Instead, they used something called cut-ups. Cut-ups were cheaper. Cut-ups is what we wear today. We take fabric, we cut it, and then we sew it together. And so all these cut-ups were being made, and they were less quality. They weren't as good. They would pull apart because people didn't have a good way to stitch them together yet, because it was also new. And people now you have the people that are making the cloth, the people that are cleaning the cloth, and you have all these people that are kind of going away. It became unemployment for the people, and they were allowing people to come in that were untrained because they didn't have to have any skills anymore. The wages for working, the working hours changed. They erased more jobs than they created, these machines, and they created poor quality goods. So on March 11, 1811, the first protests started. So they started smashing machines inside these things. They didn't have police really well back then. They had militaries of the nation, and the nation had to. I mean, this was such a big deal. The whole nation got involved with this stuff because they didn't have localized police departments as well. It turns out that a lot of the office workers, a lot of people that were the managers, the people that owned the companies, were taken up, and they were going out at night, and they were taking their destructive tools to get rid of the people. I'm trying not to say the G word, the other G word, on the channel. So they were taking these things and they were setting fires to the factories, and they were smashing things. It was and they didn't have things like Amazon back then. So they had basically war inside this mechanism, this industrial revolution. And Parliament saw this. They saw the machine breaking, and so they used, this was all in England back in the time. They used machines, and they said this was a capital crime to break a machine now. And I want to bring it back to what the Queen said, because remember, the Queen said that she doesn't want to hurt the people by allowing these machines to come in, and how fast things and laws changed around when it affected the money and how people lived their lives. Suddenly, people saw a way that they could make more money, and all the moneyed men were like, man, this is great. We got to make laws to prevent all the bad people from coming in and destroying everything, regardless of if it means that they don't have food on their table. Rapid changes like that. So April of 1812, people started dying over this stuff. Martial law was declared. The local people and the local people approved. The decentralized aggression was very difficult to handle, and protests continued until 1816 and didn't stop mechanism because we have it today. And you might say, you know what? Mechanism isn't such a big deal, but it was for a period of time back then, right? It was for a short period of time back then. And I think it's important to, I'm running through my slides real quick because I think I just talked over all of them. I want to show you a video of the Pope and what he thinks about this. Why did he choose his name? We've seen another video. You've shown another video on this channel about why he chooses his name, but specifically, he chose his name because of the Industrial Revolution. I'm going to completely talk over it. Let me know if you don't get audio from this. I want to make sure you guys hear this. Okay, I'm going to read it then, and I have the other ones queued up in a different program, so we'll be able to do that. But I don't have this one queued up, I don't think.
That's right. Got it.
So he said, I choose to take the name Leo the 14th. There are different reasons for this, but mainly because Pope Leo the 13th, in his historic encyclical Rerum Novarum, addressed the social question in the context of the first great industrial revolution. And today, the church offers to everyone the treasury of the social teaching in response to another industrial revolution. What industrial revolution? He says another industrial revolution and the developments in the field of artificial intelligence that pose a new challenge for the defense of human dignity, justice, and labor.
Wow.
Not an application.
I'm not surprised.
That is.
I knew something was gonna come out of this. There you go. It's a similar situation, right? People are losing their jobs, and here you go. AI is doing what the first industrial revolution did. So now, here comes a savior.
100%. And could this be? I mean, I have proof after proof to really go into this, because we're going to now step into what is AI. Let's understand what it is and what's going to happen. Because if we don't know, the Rerum Novarum actually talks a little bit about Sunday law. It talks about how it's important to allow people to rest. And I mean, from when this first came out, this whole AI thing, I thought, if this starts taking jobs, there's going to be a point where this thing can work 7 days a week. It can work 24/7.
Yeah.
And it can take other people's jobs, and it can do more work than they are. Guess what's going to have to step in?
Take away personal contact too, even personal contacts. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to take all these contracts, and the unions are going to have to step in.
Yeah.
To give humans the right to work, because they can't, even if it's just for a short period. I'm going to say 10 years, 5 years, or however the Industrial Revolution was to get people back on their feet to use these things. It's going to cause such a dramatic and fast change to everything. The unions will have to step in, and they'll have to say, we need to help the people. You guys need a day off. You can't be forced to work all the time like this AI thing can. Something has to give. And so that's what the Rerum Novarum did in the Industrial Revolution, is that it said, from this follows the obligation of the cessation from work and labor on Sundays and certain holy days. The rest from labor is not to be understood as merely giving away to idleness, much less must be an occasion for spending money and the vicious indulgence, as many would have it. But it should be rest from labor, hallowed by religion. And so it goes on and on, talks about rest and how that's described and all this stuff, and how we need to rest on God's holy, he says, Sunday. And so we know that's not the holy day God inscribed in the 10 Commandments. And so I think it's really interesting that you get this prophecy that's coming to pass that happened already and then continued. And now we have a new industrial revolution that's going to bring this all together really, really fast. And I'm going to prove that while we talk about AI